Hi, this is Zak Mir with the Bulletin Board Heroes here at Zak's Traders Cafe for Wednesday, the 3rd of April. Starting off with the FTSE 100, which has delivered one of its prime examples of not rising when the other markets rise, but falling like a stone when other markets fall. And here we see the market near to near-term resistance around the 78.90 area. Below that, we risk a move down to 77.90, which is basically pre-breakout resistance for the London index in the middle of March. Worst case scenario at the moment is that we have to head back down to the floor of that rising trend channel from December and the 50-day line, 7700 zone, but at the moment hoping that the 7800 area will be the worst that we see. Moving on to the DAX, and here days of rises ended yesterday, but still trying to regroup here, still near the higher levels as well. The old resistance zone back in March around 18,000, and above that we're still looking for the top of the rising October trend channel as high as 19,000 by the end of this month. The Dow is next, and this was the culprit in the breakdown that we've had for other markets. Here we've gapped down to the floor of that October rising trend channel. Exactly where it is probably defined by yesterday's support zone around 39,000, but we'd already factored in that we could head down to the 50-day line, 38,800, and so not really breaking the mold at this stage. Above the 50-day line, 38,800, looking for that September resistance line projection as high as 40,600 by the end of this month. If we do break back below the 50-day line, then the risk is of a move to 38,000, but that at the moment is the worst we are expecting. Moving on to Bitcoin, which has had troubles of its own in the recent past. The failure above the 70,000 level didn't help, and we're now heading towards that 50-day moving average, 63,000 below that, then hoping that 60,000 itself will be the worst that this market goes down to. Still trying to work out where the floor of that rising trend channel is. I suppose one can widen it, but the logical place would be actually level with the 50-day moving average, so 63,000, hopefully the floor on this latest retracement. On to the stocks, and not many to choose from today. First one is Abingdon Health, where we've had attempts, decent attempts at a breakout here, but the sticking point here, that June resistance line there around 10.5 pence. Want to see that broken so we can get up to 14 pence by the end of this month. 50-day moving average now rising, which gives a positive spin to the recent price action and suggests that we do break that 10.5 pence level relatively quickly, then 14 pence could be the minimum on the upside. Onto a stock which has never really had a good time in the recent past, and maybe even now struggling. Here we've got Contango near the floor of that falling trend channel it's been in since June last year. That's around 1.25 pence. RSI in the oversold area as well, so the key here really is for the shares to break back above the initial March support there, 1.5 pence. Otherwise a further drift could be on the cards, especially given the unfilled gap to the downside that we saw at the end of last month. Moving on to E-Star, which is in the opposite position at the moment. Very good news from the company, and that sum of parts RNS very impressive. Top of a rising trend channel base, which I'm attempting to draw at the moment, and the top of that channel heading for 3 pence by the end of this month, maybe even sooner than that, given the quality of the news that we've had today. Moving along to genedrive, where I was covering the shares yesterday on the basis that we'd had a key reversal off the low and bounced off a falling support line. Obviously, one or two people guessed correctly that there would be a big announcement today. The shares up to nearly 5.75 pence. Our initial target here was 5 pence, and above that we were looking for 7 pence, which hopefully we could still get by the end of April, while we're above the floor of the gap at just below 4 pence. Moving along to Hummingbird, where the overreaction to the specific news the company had seems to be wearing off now, where we're back near the old support there from back in October. That was at around 6.8 pence. Above that, actually looking for the shares to head up to the 50-day moving average, 8.75 pence. as a minimum, and perhaps even recover up to as high as 11.6 pence and the top of that falling trend channel from July last year by the end of this month. But the key here is, well, obviously no further bad news, but also staying above that old October low at 6.8 pence. Moving along to Premier Africa, which is not only clickbait, but an interesting charting situation at the moment as well. Here we've had another test yesterday of the floor of that rising trend channel base in place since October. The level there at basically 0.2 pence. Above that, we're looking for the 50-day line at 0.27 over the next few sessions. But decent second reaction there off the floor of that rising trend channel. Moving on to Prairie, where the rug was pulled rather unceremoniously back in February, but we were hoping that the shares would just catch the floor of that rising trend channel base from this time last year. That was around the 7 to 8 pence area, and they have above the 50-day line now at 10.1 pence, looking for that gap to be filled up to 12.7 pence. So interesting that the shares have bounced back again, and I suppose quite impressive. Onto stock, the type of stock I don't normally look at, but as we are short of candidates, we're looking at S4 Capital. Here, very volatile there at the lows, but the takeaways here are the gap close buy signal, the hammer candle that we had last week, and the way that also in the last couple of days, the retracement of that big up day that we had on the 28th has only been around a third of the daily range. That suggests that there's plenty of strength in here, and we could easily hit up to 65 pence by the end of this month or even sooner. And it's obviously interesting to try and guess what would be the driver for such a rebound in the share price. But with that spike and then the bear trap below the 50-day line, I would have thought that most of the weak hands are out there and the shares are free to rise well. Onto a stock which I hardly ever look at, which is the Mission Group. And here, the reason for inclusion is the rising trend channel base. That's been in place since October, and that rather nasty gap down. Current situation is that we're just nudging above the 50-day line, around 22 pence, and looking for 30 pence by the end of this month at the top of that rising trend channel. We've also had an RSI rebound above neutral 50, which tends to be a good leading indicator signal. Going on to the last stock of the day, which is unlikely candidate in the form of Tungsten West. Here the shares seem to be improving with the new management from memory, and we've got a rising trend channel base here. Top of the channel there around the 1.8 pence level. That's our initial target. Ideally, we get up to at least 2 pence by the end of this month, and it looks as though we have a nice basing situation here. See the blue candles or blue or flat candles, and also the rising 50-day line as well. And each of the recent days, we've seen the shares open at the low, close at the high. So looks like somebody's sniffing around in a positive way. That's it for me today. More updates tomorrow.